And why... Thank you, Lydia. So that's really why it comes down to it. It certainly is helpful, and it's definitely, especially as studies become more and more complicated and extended, having a table of contents is certainly helpful to navigate through it, especially for, principal investigators who just need to focus potentially on their particular sections associated with their analyses, or technical staff that need to focus in on a particular activity. They don't want to be like digging through a 30-page document trying to find how often they're supposed to be doing body weights. So table of contents is super helpful, but it just comes down to, as Camilla said, that word required. So when we say required, we're looking back to those 21 CFR Part 58, those rules. What does it say in there that needs to be there?
Yeah, so basically, if you don't have 1, 2, or 3 in your protocol, there is no GLP deviation. I mean, it doesn't, you kind of feel like you're missing something. But if you miss number 4, there is, and you don't cover it up by the time the report is written, that is a GLP deviation.
Personally, I would expect most protocols to have table of contents, just as Sherry said, because it's practical. It helps to navigate. It helps to orientate, to find things easily. I would also expect version number. I would expect a couple of other things, good documentation, control, and practices. But here, as we are going back, there is a list of things that are the must, and statement of the purpose is one of them, and it's logical, because otherwise, okay, are we sure what are we doing and why are we doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the GLP deviation if your protocol doesn't have that. I mean, that's, if it can be simplified, that's the way that I would simplify it.
Let's move to the next question. An animal treatment log for a non-clinical toxicity study contains the following information: study number, group number, animal number, date of diagnosis, and a description of diagnosis by the vet, and description and authorization of treatment. Treatment is to be given on an as-needed basis. The technician signs and dates whenever treatment is given. Is it enough? Is it acceptable? And we have 4 options again. No, there is no management review of the records. Yes, it's okay. No, there is no documentation to indicate if animal was checked and treatment determined to be not needed on a given day. No, the vet cannot deem treatment as needed. So
for all 3 only.
I remember we had already this question in one of the previous sessions, but sometimes not the longest answer is necessarily the correct. So this is just a warning. In this case, yes, you are driving in the right direction, but it's, I know sometimes people think like the longest answer must be the correct one. Not always, just a warning. It's very similar. You have a similar situation in GCP work. Let's say a medication is given for adverse event, but the adverse event, presence or absence, should be checked at every visit, and it's not enough to have nothing mentioned, meaning there was nothing, there was no adverse event. It should be in the source documents stating that the question was asked and the answer was negative. And this is a very similar thing. The animal must be checked, and only then it's determined whether the medication is needed or not, but without any record. Was it forgotten? Was it missed somehow? We can only guess, and we shouldn't be guessing. We should have clear evidence for any decision, given or not given. Anyone else?
Yeah, Susan had a comment. Susan, would you like to speak on your comment?
Yeah, when I first did this in the practice exam, I picked 2 because, I mean, you're allowed to give the treatment as needed. I don't know why that has to be documented. I mean, I knew the right answer, I think, because I just knew my answer was wrong, and I do remember kind of, it must be this long one, but.
So if the answer would be, if the treatment had to be given once a day, then you just expect it to be every day, right? But when it says as needed,
Yes.
then how do you know when was it needed?
I'm just not sure that really is important. I don't know why that's so critical. I guess my question now is which regulation would this be violating if you say, yes, it's acceptable?
So you're basically not following the vet requirement.
Okay, there it is.
Yep, there you go. So you're not following the vet said as needed. And you don't have a way of telling the vet, yes, I thought this is needed because of this. So that documentation is missing.
Okay, so, but I think I'd have to read these references to part 58 and see how this answer is consistent with those. So that's helpful.
Yeah, so something that we always teach is that the lack of documentation doesn't mean that happened. We always need a positive documentation that something happened.
Right.
So that would be in this case. Just because the lack it says doesn't say as needed, that's a lack of documentation. And that doesn't help it that for us to know that that's really happened. We always need positive documentation. Does that make sense? I don't know if I kind of complicated it, but if you are, for example, not saying, if you're not documenting as
I think what throws me off is that it says as needed basis. So, which is kind of loose, like you can give it as much as you want, or so it's it's kind of loose. And if it says you must take, you can only give this much once a day if needed, but I'm going to read your, I mean, I'm not doubting that it's the right answer, but I don't know what the regulation is.
Yeah, maybe Sherry and Kimala can explain better.
Yeah, we have a
The
diagram.
citation specifically says, this is in the animal care section, at the initiation of a non-clinical laboratory study, animals shall be free of any disease or condition that might interfere with the purpose or conduct of the study. If during the course of the study, the animals contact such a disease or condition, the diseased animals shall be isolated if necessary. These animals may be treated for disease or signs of disease, provided that such treatment does not interfere with the study. The diagnosis, authorizations of treatment, description of treatment, and each date of treatment shall be documented and shall be retained. So as Anita was saying, the requirements are all there with the exception of as needed. So if the instructions from the vet is that the animals is to be treated for the next 5 days, you document it for 5 days, everything is good. But as needed, the problem with as needed is that.
But the regs, do you just list everything they have there and the date the treatment was given? They have to sign, they have to give the date whenever treatment is given.
Yes.
So.
But you're missing the point, the instruction. So at
Yeah.
this point, the vet's instruction is as needed. So
Yes.
if the technician goes and gives the treatment on day 1, they sign and they do it. And then you see in your data, they've signed on day 4. Well, what happened to day 2 and 3? Did they not need it?
Yeah.
But you don't know, or did they give it and forget to document?
I know, but
I-
in the requirement that you just read to me, what part of that requirement is being violated?
The
It doesn't have a
diagnosis,
positive-
the authorization of treatment by the vet. So as needed is the authorization. So that's the instructions now. You,
Okay, but it says here the animal log has the description and authorization of treatment.
but, okay, I don't know how to explain it differently.
That's
It-
okay. Again, I'll read it and I'll take your word for it. If I ever get this question again.
But
Okay.
let me try. We have toxicity study. So there is a product that is toxic. There is a date of diagnosis, meaning that the animal is diagnosed with and has some symptoms. And then let's imagine if these symptoms get worse, then this treatment is to be given. If the symptoms are better, the treatment is not needed to be. So I check the animal and I see, yes, the symptoms are worse than they were yesterday. So it should be given. But today, no, the animal looks perfectly fine. So I don't need to give it. And but I should document, and we heard it from Sherry saying that proper documentation. So there is a decision which is driven by the instruction. Give it, don't give it. But I need to have my decision, either giving or not giving, supported by adequate documentation. Otherwise, if I go there as an auditor, was it forgotten? Is there a lack of documentation? Or I should not be guessing. I should have some documentation that shows that the protocol was correctly followed and the decision, give, don't give, has supportive information.
Okay, and I guess I don't want to belabor it. I need to do my own homework, but for me, these questions, when you say, link it directly to a violation directly, and I just don't see it, but I'm going to look at it myself and
I think what Sherry said, like if it's missing a day, then you need to provide an evidence that you need to tell me that it was not needed. Hey, today, I don't know, I'm just going to say something silly. Today I checked the animal did not have fever, therefore they did not need it, right? So you need to document that.
Exactly.
So
And
then,
sorry,
go ahead, Sherry, go ahead. That's
Yep.
what I was going to say.
I was just going to say that exactly what you're saying. So, while the 5890C is the instructions concerning care of animals that need treatment during the study, I think this actually is more of an example of documentation standards, that not all data was documented. So on those days where it wasn't needed, how do we know that it wasn't, and how do we know that it wasn't given and forgotten to be documented versus a positive entry of animal verified and treatment not needed on day 2 and day 3, and then day 4, oops, we need it again. So that, I think, is the bigger gap, not so much the allowance of vet treatment, because under that 5890C, everything is there, but it's the instructions that, without documenting on the days confirmed not needed, without documenting those, you have a gap, because you don't know if something was done and forgot to be documented, or it just simply wasn't given but not documented as verified that it shouldn't have been. Right?
And that's a different part of the regulation, right? What you're saying makes more sense to me, because it looks like they're complying with 58.90. And that's not the right citation. Maybe documentation, I think, sounds more.
I would argue it's a combination of both, because if your doctor says take it whenever you have a headache, and you're in a clinical study and you start popping pills every day, but you don't document that you have a headache, you only document it on 2 of those days, that's the problem. But the other aspect is the 58.130. It would be E. All data generated in the conduct Yes, I think.
And
that's-
I don't want to belabor it because I know we have more questions, and let me just think about this one.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that I think you're not the only one, because we have other two
Oh.
comments too. We
Oh,
want to
okay. I thought I was the only one.
No, I mean, that's the thing. That's the whole purpose. We're trying to teach so you know what little keyword that you need to be careful about.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. So someone wrote, sometimes we see activity to be done if possible. Do we need something to be clear if it's possible?
I would say yes. So if you're supposed to collect 5 mLs of blood and you only collect 1, you would be documenting the data that collected only 1 could be obtained. Or there are potentially some, no, not even, like, so for example, if you have to take take the left and right kidneys during a necropsy, and you're doing the necropsy and the animal doesn't have a left kidney, they were just born that way, you would still document that in your data. So no left kidney obtained because there was none. So you still want that positive documentation, right? Because think of it as a regulator. If you're coming in to review this study and you see something and it wasn't done, but there is that flexibility, they don't know you, right? They have to assume the worst. They're going to say, did they follow the instructions and they weren't able to, or did they just not do it, right?
And
Because
like,
they're going to be seeing that animal or that aspect in front of them. So they have to go, did the animal need treatment that day? And they gave it and forgot to give it and forgot to document it, or they didn't need it. And that's why it's not documented. So
yeah.
you
And
don't
you
want
said
them
some,
questioning.
I think you said something important was like what regulator? The regulator, and I can at least speak for the FDA, they must have a 21 CFR or Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act violation. There has to be a violation. If there's no violation, there's no problem. So that's why I'm always like, what's the violation? So it has to be clear what part of what regulation is this not complying with. It has to be clear. And it's not clear to me.
I would say 58-130E.
Okay, thank you.
Someone else says, I think of it that the technician may not be qualified to make the decision if the treatment is needed or not on subsequent days. The veterinarian is qualified to make that decision. The vet should have said, treat for 3 days, then recheck, or something solid like that. I mean, again, it depends on this issue, right? It doesn't say what treatment they're having. I mean, if it's as simple as, hey, if there's bleeding going on, do this as needed. Well, I mean, I think anyone can see if the animal is bleeding or not, right?
Mhm.
So those things are, we need to be mindful of. If that vet is comfortable enough to say as needed, then that that allows the veterinarian vet tech to make that decision. So
Agreed, Anita. And the fact that it's a technician administering the treatment, that it's not something potentially high level that a vet has to administer. So it's not like a controlled drug substance that anybody can just go ahead and start administering. So it's, potentially, a non-human primate, got his tail clipped in the cage and he has a little wound and you're putting some polysporin on it. So, if it's bleeding, put some polysporin on it. If it's not, it's healing, we're good. And that's as needed, right? So it can be very simplistic. Obviously, for a much more complicated, then yes, they would need to be more specific or something like that. But one would assume, based on this example, the fact that the technician was given those instructions to do it, that they have the qualifications to perform that technique.
Someone else asked, does as needed mean that you record treatment even if it's not needed?
No, it means that if it's not needed, there is no treatment record, but the negative treatment record is supported with the reason why it was not given, because it was not needed, because the animal was okay, because whatever we were looking for as a reason to give it was not present.
So generally in a preclinical study where you have an animal needing treatment and as needed, so that means that they had some sort of issue. So usually there's going to be some sort of a clinical examination of whatever the issue is to say, yes, okay, so I would do the check and, oh, this is happening. So yes, it is. And if it's not, I'm still doing the check. You did an activity. If you don't document, that's a problem. So you would say, check the tail, normal. Then that proves that the treatment wasn't needed that day. The next day, go back. Oh, tail's bleeding again. The monkey must be chewing on his tail again. It's needed today. You're doing that check because when you are doing an activity, you want to document that you did it. And that's, I think, the gap there, right? Because as needed. So if it's as needed, you have to, there has to be that
But she's
assessment.
doing a tour right now with a client. Do you need something?
I think someone unintentionally not on mute, so we can hear you. So especially if you have confidential information, you
Yeah.
want to be careful. But sorry, Sherry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no problem. No, I was finished anyways.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, I fully agree. As needed, it doesn't mean that you can just give whenever you want to. You do need to say animals bleeding. I gave them as prescribed. And then next day, animals not bleeding. I did not prescribe. So that's a very good example too. Someone else says, I think this is a minor deviation if during auditing, because if it's not, because it's not a good compliant of GLP and needs to be improved. It's I see that a lot in the preclinical studies. So that is not abnormal for veterinarian to come and say as needed. Again, if it's something huge, the vet will say, no, I need to examine them. But if it's not that big of a deal, the vet tech can do that. Then they always say as needed. This is not an abnormal thing. So I don't know, Sherry, Camilla, I've seen this many times. You guys?
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's really about documentation, and meaning it's not documented, it does not exist. That's the old rule for inspectors and for auditors. So anything that happens or does not happen should have a supportive documentation why it was done this or that way.
Camilla, I totally wanted to say this thing that, it falls into another criteria that's, you just said very nicely that, if we leave the blank space, why we do not like to leave blank space, why we cross it out and put NA, just not to give any kind of impression that the way that the person missed it or not, So that's the reason that we don't want to leave it blank. It is kind of falls into that kind of criteria here in a different way that, you cannot assume that just leaving it everything blank, that it was done, We need to make sure that,
But the other reason for not leaving it blank is that someone else can fill in false data later.
Yes,
And-
yes, that's another reason too. Thank you.
I think we can move to the next question.
Yeah.
So, protocol states that media will be collected and stored in 0.75 milliliter cryovials for later cytokine analysis. On the day of collection, the biologists used 2 milliliter cryovials to store the media. A QA auditor noted the discrepancy during a routine in-phase inspection and included it as a finding in an audit report. How should the discrepancy be handled? The study director can respond to the audit finding indicating that the cryovial size did not have any impact on the study, so no additional documentation is required. A protocol amendment should be created to modify the vial size to 2 milliliters. A note to file can be created by the study director to authorize the cryovial substitution and indicate that there was an whatever volume it was. A deviation report should be completed indicating that an incorrect vial size was used, and this deviation should be noted in the report. Now, what are the choices that we have in the chat?
All of them are 4 so far.
Yeah.
And everybody is fine. Wonderful. I think we might have been already also having this one before, but yes, it was at the time it happened, it was not the correct size. So there is a deviation. What happens next after, maybe for future study, that's a totally different story. So we had a deviation and that should be noted in. During an in-life audit of a test substance characterization study, the technician reveals to the quality assurance unit person that the gentle heating of the reference standard is required to adequately extract a sample for the analysis. The validated method being followed in the protocol does not include a heating step. So which of the following should the quality assurance person recommend? Advice. The heating step must be documented in the study records and approved by management. There should be a statement in the final report describing the heating step. The heating step must be documented in the study records and also as a protocol deviation. The method should be revised and revalidated to include the heating step. The heating step must be documented in the study records and as the SOP deviation approved by test facility management. And last option, the heating step must be documented in study records and be documented as an SOP deviation. The method should be revised to include the heating step. So what are
The answers so far are 2
Oh, no, don't
only.
do it. Sorry.
Suzanne? It seems you are inadvertently live in your discussion and recorded.
I'm sorry.
Guys have any discussions at all? Looks like everybody says 2.
Okay, so let's take a look. The heating step must be documented in the study records and as a protocol deviation. The method should be revised and revalidated to include the heating step. Yes, everybody is correct. Wonderful. And this is exactly the correct thing to be done. It's a deviation, but if it's something that needs, which is necessary, then definitely the SOP should not stand as it is for years to come.
Now, I would say that in that example, in terms of the fact that it says the protocol specified validated method, makes it 2. However, if your protocol just said the formulation will be prepared based on instructions provided by the sponsor, it could very well be number 4. Right? If it's no longer stipulated that that is an expected step in your protocol, then it may just be an SOP deviation.
Yes, but in the example as it's described here,
Yes.
then the answer number 2 is correct, but really depends on the situation. And if there is a small difference, then the correct answer may very well be different as well.
Exactly. And it's just highlighting the point that because you know, there are a lot of questions, and at some point you may get a more complicated one that you take up some time. So the easy ones, do make sure you're carefully reading, because if that word protocol wasn't there, the argument for number 4 would be quite solid. Right? So if you're reading quickly and don't read protocol, then you may not select the right one.
Good point. Yeah. Reading correctly and carefully the
All
whole
the time.
section and all the options, there might be just one small word as a difference. Or if I read quickly and skip not, then I would be selecting a wrong answer, because the question I will be answering will be a different question from the answer which is from the question which is there. And it happens so many times. It happens to me that I answer something quickly, and they were asking the opposite.
One thing I'd like to add here, chime it, because it usually this kind of like instruction procedure are based on SOPs, not like protocol will not dictate so much in details that you stare up the heating step. So that's the reason I will try to stay away from the protocol deviation. So that's kind of the reason in the number 4, it is most like the procedural process, not much protocol process. Protocol goes a little bit more higher level rather than less so much very in details level,
You have different protocols, and some of them are really including SOPs, including the version and the SOP revision time. If it's during the study, there might be a new version and you need to have a protocol amendment. Otherwise, there is a problem. So you are right that details which are maybe way too much, it's better, unless it's necessary, not to put them. Like, yeah, I've seen phone numbers and then a protocol amendment issued because there was a new phone number of a person. So this is a bit overkill. But if it is there, then okay, it's an approved protocol that should be followed. But we could have a discussion about, let's say, good protocol writing practices and what to include, what not to include, what must be there, what is nice to have, and what is better not to do, because we may create problems for ourselves in the future. We have just a couple of minutes left, so let me move forward.
Hey, Camilla,
Yeah.
someone is asking if this is going to be another session. This is the last session, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So this is the last session, everyone.
Correct. And I guess you have already your dates, those of you who are going to take the exam now. So a couple of maybe days or weeks more to prepare. So
Sorry,
now,
just to chime in, Ashton was asking more for those that taking it in the fall. And yes, we are looking to set up another series of the study groups for those taking in the fall. So absolutely,
Yes.
that will be done.
Thanks
Yes.
for correcting me, Sherry. Appreciate it.
No problem, because I was like, no, we've done all 6. But
Well, I
yes,
thought this is it for the year. I
Yeah.
did not know we're gonna have another one. Okay.
yeah, because there's a second session, so not everyone may have been aware that they want to take it in the fall. So we're hoping to offer it again.
Yes. Yes. You will have a double portion. So if you are planning for the fall exam, then our plan is for each exam term to have the study groups.
But they're probably are they gonna have different questions though? Or yeah, they're gonna be the same type of questions. So it's gonna be
Yeah, that's going to be tricky because I think the practice exam, the preparation is just one. And but we can ask, and since there is a question bank, as far as I know, then hopefully we may be able to get at least some questions that are different and not exactly the same. Otherwise, you can listen to the recording and why to bother, right?
Unfortunately, I just wanted to chime in. Unfortunately, there won't be able to be any other questions shared. That's simply because the questions, any question in the question bank is potentially able to be used for a future exam. The only questions that are that would be available are those that have been deactivated for not being good questions. So we wouldn't want to share with you those bad questions to prepare you badly for the exam.
But maybe what we can do as a faculty, we can modify the existing questions to enable selection of a different answer than now. like we had with the protocol just a moment ago. If we take that away, and we can either replace or delete one word or insert something in addition, and then the correct answer might be different. So we can maybe play a little bit with these things.
I think that's a good idea for, us to take the practice ones that we have and then just tweak them a little bit and say, well, now we reworded it a little bit different. So it might not be the same answer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's take this one.
Could be a little tricky, so because these tests, I mean, these questions are validated. They go through a lot of vetting before they're used, and you could inadvertently give a wrong answer. And
I know, but we will discuss it, and we will have some kind of approval before we throw it at you. So don't worry.
okay,
But no promises. That's what it is. No promises. But they SQ definitely can try.
Yeah.
I did want to break in again as a representative, just letting you know, these questions that you have for the practice exam are not the same as exam questions. Exam questions have been validated. The
Okay.
practice exam questions were written by a separate group, using the same methods as the questions for the exam itself. But they were not statistically validated in the same way that the exam was. So for example, we look every year to see if there are any questions that potentially are causing an issue, or that there's that if, for example, if there's a question where people who are passing the exam are getting it wrong and people who are otherwise not passing are getting it right, then we might look at that exam question and say, is this misleading, something like that. And there's also scoring by members of the exam committee. All those things happen for the actual exam question, but they did not happen for these practice test questions. So these are not validated in that sense.
okay, thank you.
Someone
Okay.
says this session is about what to advise. Would be better if could have questions related to this aspect.
I completely agree. Unfortunately, in the practice exam, I could not really find anything except for one or two. So I added a couple of more, but I agree that it seems like not really fitting the topic. Yes, that's true. I agree.
So there's room for improvement, just no promises.
Yeah.
We definitely can think about it.
I don't want to take too much of your time. We already had this question before, and I think that this is actually
Oops.
one of the final. So let me just kill the rest. You will have it. You will get the slides, and we spend some time discussing the scenario as needed, which has its value. That's why we are here. It doesn't matter that we did not go through all those questions, because all in all, during all the 6 sessions, they were covered. I know that because except for one, I was sitting there. So we should be fine with that. And I want to wish you the best of success, not only good luck, but the best of success in your exam. And really looking forward also to hear your experiences from the exam after you take it.
Will do. Thank you all. Thanks for all your help.
Don't panic. Don't be afraid. It's sometimes we get nervous, like we see, the clock is flying and we are just 1/3 through. As we said a couple of times, go through the easy ones that you can answer on the spot in a split of a second.
So, okay, so Camille, just can I ask last question? So we should not
Would
spend
you-
more than a
just
minute.
Please finish and then ask your question.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Flag those questions that you see they are more complicated. You can go and see them all at the end. This way, you would have time for all those questions that are easy. Plus, you will save time for those questions that need more But all in all, you have better chance to succeed. Okay, now go ahead with your question.
Do you recommend just 1 minute a question to spend?
That's approximately the time that you are expected to spend on a question. You may need 10 seconds, or
Okay.
you may need 3 minutes, really. Not every question is the same. So that's why I'm saying make those, answer those that are easy, and then spend enough time that you need. And also what happens that you have a question that gives you a hint for the answer for another one. See, yeah, okay, this is logically combined together. So just be calm. Don't worry, you have time to go through everything. Don't try to change the answers that you got typically correct at the first attempt. You start analyzing and rethinking and making it overcomplicated. And typically we change our correct answer to something. Last chance for a last comment or panel. Anita, Sherry, and any last wishes or thoughts?
Just take your time, don't panic, and worst case scenario, if you don't pass it, it's truly not the end of the world. It does not it does not mean that you're not, you know, you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes it's just a bad year of results. So don't stress about it.
Does the practice exam like help like sufficiently to be able to take the exam?
It gives you the type of questions that you may expect to be asked in the real exam. Meaning the choices, sometimes you have like option 1 is 1, 2, 3. Option 2 is 1, 2, 4. And you have now several correct answers and you need to find the correct combination. But most of the time it's choose 1. And you have the different types that points out to different directions. So it should give you the feeling how it will look like. It's not definitely all. Here we have 30 questions. In the real exam, you have 165, 115 of them do not count. So you have 150 real questions, but you do not know which ones are those 50 that don't count. So take everything as this counts.
Okay, thank you.
And don't forget, you're not penalized for guessing. So if you've eliminated 2 and there's only, it could be A or it could be B, take a guess. If don't spend too much, you can flag it to go back and rethink if you want, but take a guess and move on.
Yeah, it's like flipping a coin, 50% chance you get it right.
So it's based on how many you get right, not how many you get wrong.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Lydia, for all your wonderful support. You've been amazing for this first run. And it's been, I would say, really great experience. And I'm happy we restarted this initiative. And thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Anita, and everybody. And of course, you guys, that you are interested and you are passionate to get better. And you want also to prove and show that, yes, you achieved something. So the best of success.
And thank you for organizing it, Camilla. Greatly appreciated.
Thank
All
you
right.
guys. Camilla,